everyone, and welcome to another episode of Dermatologist Talk Science of Beauty. I'm Dr. Teo Wan Lin, and today we're going to kickstart a series under Science and Sustainability. Now, this topic is particularly close to my heart because my training as a medical doctor is based on science. And at the same time, I am also personally very enthusiastic about sustainable practices, but I also critically evaluate these practices on my own based on my scientific knowledge. Now, it may seem intuitive that science and sustainable practices go hand in hand, but there seems to be a few issues that have arisen over the last few years which have gotten my attention. And one of these topics relates to the consumption of animal-based products. And we're going to talk about dairy in this episode.
This is a topic I'm excited to hear more about. I've always wondered about the link between dairy products and how it affects our skin, so it will be interesting to hear more about the science behind that. I also know that you've recently had a pretty major change to your diet. Can you tell us more about the philosophy behind that?
Now, since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, I personally made the decision to eliminate animal-based products from my diet. I still consume seafood, fish in small amounts, but I subscribe to a predominantly plant-based diet. Animal products, dairy, meats, I have completely eliminated. Now, the reason for my decision was primarily because seeing the way the COVID-19 pandemic started and panned out, from a scientific perspective, I feel very strongly that as long as we continue to farm animals, if we invade the habitats of other creatures and, continue to consume meat, we are fueling an industry that will no doubt produce more pandemics. Nature herself is an ecosystem, and an ecosystem is one that is sustainable on its own, and that's the beauty of it. Science isn't a philosophy, neither is it a concept that is derived from someone's ideas. It is truly the study of what is around us, making observations, logical deductions, analysis, and these findings are then applied to, say, the development of new interventions that are beneficial for the ecosystem, for mankind, for other species. Now, I feel that from an ethical perspective, there is a lot of advantages in us subscribing to a plant-based diet as well. There is clear evidence that mammals feel pain, emotions, and it should not be our goal as mankind to merely treat our fellow creatures on this earth as commodities. So we certainly don't own any species, and simply because we are the dominant civilization on Earth, it doesn't mean that we ought to act in an authoritarian manner, but rather be seen as guardians of what nature has bestowed us with. But at the same time, I am fully aware that my recommendations are to be solidly grounded in science, and I feel that there is indeed a meeting point between these two.
That's so insightful. I totally agree. I think the pandemic really should be a wake-up call, and we should be more conscious about our actions and practices on this earth. Moving on, can you introduce us to some of the topics you're going to cover today? Can you explain more on the science behind how dairy products affect our skin?
So more on that, milk-derived amino acids, proteins, they actually promote insulin secretion and cause the insulin-like growth factor IGF-1 synthesis by the liver. This itself is regarded as a driver of acne as it stimulates the growth of the skin follicles, the epithelium, and also keratinization and the retention of the dead skin cells on the surface of the skin. Study of genetics about IGF-1, the differences known as polymorphism, has also been shown to increase one's tendency to develop acne. Now, there have been several observational studies internationally published about dairy intake and children, in adolescents and young adults. And the main concern is certainly because of the different ways these studies are performed. So there could be what we call methodological flaws, including biases and inappropriate sort of weighing of results and skewed estimates. But in this latest journal meta-analysis, it has overall concluded that all this information being taken in totality does suggest the role that dairy consumption has in acne is a significant one. Now, for all the proponents of the controversy that dairy may or may not worsen acne, I think the bulk of the evidence now, based on the meta-analysis, actually points towards the fact that yes, regardless of how you analyze it and taking into consideration what we call inter-study variances, and including statistical uncertainty that's been built into the model, it is conclusive that all this data points towards a definite link between dairy consumption and acne development.
Well, there you have it. From the science, we can see that dairy does play a role in acne development. Moving on, can you tell us a little bit about how your recent experiences with the pandemic that is still raging on now has changed your outlook on life and work?
Now, I think it's very important for us at this point of time in mankind's history, when we are coming to grips with the fact that we're not alone in this world and monopolizing every single thing on earth simply because we are dominant species, because the COVID pandemic has literally caused all of the industries to grind to a stop with the circuit breaker and lockdowns imposed worldwide. And undoubtedly, when you go into the science of how pandemics start, you first have to consider the fact that it's across species and is coming from the animal kingdom. But the way nature works is such that we should not even be exposed to these creatures carrying these microorganisms and in close contact. So something is clearly wrong when species like the bat host viruses that they are able to tolerate in their immune system, and they have evolved to be able to combat these viruses. It crosses over to mankind. And to be honest, if we were to predict where the next virus or deadly pandemic will arise from, it would be certainly again from the animal kingdom. And even with the current COVID situation, we know that mutations will continue to occur when they cross-infect other species. So the logical thing to do really is to consider if we are able to eliminate inappropriate farming practices or even our consumption of animal meat and animal-based products.
I see. Well, tell us more about the science behind heading towards more plant-based food in our diets.
Now, I feel that the increasing body of evidence in scientific literature points towards plant-derived, antioxidant, nutraceutical-rich foods rather than animal-based products. Now, the need for vitamin B12 for protein can be obtained via either supplements, because vitamin B12 is actually synthesized. And the animals themselves, the reason why animal meat, animal products contain vitamin B12 is because the animals themselves synthesize it. So it can be obtained in fortified cereal, in almond milk, for example. And protein, there is just so much evidence that plant-derived sources of protein, such as beans, chickpeas, they actually are a lot more nutritious, calorie for calorie, in terms of its nutrient density compared to animal-based protein. Now, the case for eliminating dairy, again, an animal-based product, it stems from first, the scientific realization that we do not see benefits for the skin when you are consuming dairy. Now, second is, of course, the great cruelty that the dairy industry subjects the animals to. I think COVID-19 has caused a lot of us to reflect on how sustainable our lifestyles are. And, the very realistic thing is, when we were all under lockdown, a lot of people started growing their own food. If you have access to a garden or if you do vertical gardening, I think that gives you a little bit more confidence when you are growing it yourself. But when you think about how sustainable meat products are, or even milk, in order for a cow to produce milk, and many people, including myself, seem to conveniently overlook the science behind that, the cow has to first get pregnant. And the milk that's produced by a lactating cow is actually not meant for humans. It's meant for the baby calf. So artificial insemination occurs in dairy farms, clearly in a brutal way. If you want to think about anyone of mankind undergoing that sort of procedure, is actually assault. And not just that, when the cow is lactating, in order for dairy farms to harvest that milk, they actually need to forcibly remove the baby calf from their mothers so that the milk can be reserved for milk production and sale. I feel that if we were to confront ourselves with this reality, then it becomes extremely painful to support such a brutal process. Now, are there ethical dairy farms? I think there are various organizations looking to the welfare of animals that have done lots of research. It's available publicly. And, the reality is, with the COVID pandemic, a lot of these things become unnecessary. And, if you're going to talk about the nutritional value of milk, I feel that, we have long advocated for babies, for children, for toddlers, of the milk consuming age group to actually take breast milk. And cow's milk itself, and now we know that it contains so much fat, and it's also full of these proteins that trigger off IGF-1. And IGF-1 is a pro-inflammatory mediator that actually stimulates and worsens acne formation. So I think in totality, there is a lot of science that drives us to make this ethical decision of turning away from dairy. Now, I have to say that I was a big dairy fan all the way until mid-2020, in the midst of the pandemic, when I did my personal research into the ethics of animal farming and our relationship with animals. And I realized that, this was something that I could not foresee myself continuing to do. So I naturally turned to alternative sources of milk, soya milk, almond milk. And if you look deep into the literature for the benefits and nutritional benefits of these plant-based milks, you realize that there are a whole lot more nutraceutical bioactive compounds than you find in animal-based milk.
And to finish off, what are some superfoods that we can include more of in our diets?
Polyunsaturated fatty acids, for one, contrast directly with the saturated fats present in animal-based products. And the good thing about polyunsaturated fats is that, number one, it helps us retain a healthy skin barrier. Number two, it also helps to increase our source of good cholesterol and lower our source of bad cholesterol. And all these play a huge role in the prevention of metabolic diseases like diabetes and hypertension, cardiac disease. So, that aside, I think it's important to understand the inherent value of incorporating plant-based products as opposed to animal-based products in one's diet. The main thing is that every single plant I know of contains some level of antioxidants, and antioxidants, as we know, are the key to preventing the aging processes from accelerating. Now, I wouldn't say it prevents aging, but having a high exposure to antioxidants in your diet will protect you in many ways from inflammation processes, and also intervene in the process of carcinogenesis, which is cancer formation, which develops as a result of the body being unable to repair damaged DNA, causing the mutated cells to proliferate. That's it for this week on my podcast, Dermatologist Talks, Science of Beauty. You can follow me on my Instagram at Dr. Teo Wan Lin, and remember to follow us for the latest podcast updates on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and on Google Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.